Welcome back to the garage. Today the weather is absolutely beautiful out here. It actually has stopped raining for once, so I figured it's time to do a little bit more work to the yellow Ford F600, and let me show you what I got in store. For those of you who may not know, this is my 1978 Ford F600 four-wheel drive. Has a 391 big block in it, 5-speed manual transmission. This truck does run and drive, and I'm planning on converting this over to a rollback. But for the time being, what I really need to do is still have a temporary fuel tank hooked up to this truck so I can start it up. It's never really a good idea to have a project just sit without running. And what I'm going to do, this is what I found the other day at O'Reilly's. It's a Dorman 603-001. It's a coolant reservoir tank. And what I'm going to do is mount this up on the radiator support and use it as a temporary fuel tank for this truck. I've got some fuel line, some 5/16 fuel line. I'm going to mount it up on the inside of the radiator support and run the fuel line down to the fuel pump on the truck. That way, anytime that I want to come out here and start it up, I can go ahead and do that. I would drain the tank on the side of the truck and put fuel in it, but whenever I do the rollback swap that I'm planning on doing, I actually have to remove the fuel tank off of the side of the frame to get to the double frame section on this truck, so I don't really want to empty the fuel out and put fuel in it just to empty it back out later on down the road. So let me get the camera stand set up and we'll get this little temporary fuel tank put on the truck. Now let me show you as best as I can how I'm going to accomplish this. I'm going to get in here and take the rubber fuel line off the left hand side of that fuel pump, and I'm going to run it up to this little reservoir and mount it up on the core support of the truck, or the radiator support, somewhere in this area. Might just use some baling wire just for the time being. That way I don't have to worry about drilling holes in here if I'm just going to take it out later on down the road. Some of you may notice how nice and clean the engine bay is on this truck, and there's a little bit of a story behind that. I may or may not have done a power wash video where I clean this engine off. I've done a really good job of spraying it down with oven cleaner, and I had about 15 minutes worth of footage of how I cleaned this engine off, but whenever I actually started out, I hit the firewall with the power washer, and I guess a chunk of paint come off and hit this lens and completely ruined all of that footage. So I'm going to try to throw up the before and after pictures of what this engine looked like so you can see how nice it did actually clean up. The next thing to do is to set up the camera stand and throw these parts on there. Now whoever put this on before was nice enough to face the clamp all the way up towards the top, where I had to use a really long screwdriver and come down through the top to get to it, instead of just putting it here where I can use a regular short screwdriver, so that was nice. That fuel line's absolutely rotten on there too, so I'm going to splice it real quick at the very end. Okay, so now take the new fuel line, get it down onto the fuel pump fitting. See the finished product. The truck's actually running pretty good. This fuel hose was the culprit. This is the end where it went to the fuel pump. This is the end where it's supposed to hook to the rest of the rubber hose and end up going to the steel line underneath the cab. And you can see that the end of this is completely rotten. It's rotten all the way underneath of it. It's split all the way down. You can see how bad this hose is. That's why in the previous videos when I went to start this, I guess it was sucking air from this end that was completely rotten off. After I undone the clamp that goes to the fuel pump and tucked this hose out of the way, it completely snapped off. So The truck's sitting there running really good. That temporary fuel tank was a mission accomplished. Amazingly enough, there's a break in this storm system. It's nice and sunny after work, so I'm trying to come out here and do a little bit of prep work on this truck and get this truck ready to pull the bed off of it. And what I was talking about in a previous video, you can see where the end of this frame on the truck stops, and then they've lengthened this. They put a piece of half-inch plate from the frame of the truck to this receiver hitch that they've kind of built on the back of it. Now I'm going to get in here with a plasma cutter. I'm going to cut this about right in the middle. And then I'm also going to get back here where this hitch is on, and I got to do a little bit more cutting on it. I actually tried the other day, but we've been getting so much rain. As soon as I got that far, I had to drag the plasma cutter back inside the garage. It started pouring down. But you can see the original frame is right here. They got this plate welded underneath of it, and it runs down to this hitch. So I'm going to cut it off here, cut it off back there, do the same thing on the other side. The good thing is, that's pretty nice thick steel, so I can always keep these chunks for something else. And one other thing I don't really like doing is cutting U-bolts. I mean, you can see how big these are. Those are probably 15-inch U-bolts, but they're really rusted up. I don't think I'll ever get the bottom nut to come off of there. You can see how bad that's rusted and pitted pretty bad. And even if I could get them loose, there's no way to take them out because there's only 4 inches between the top of that piece of metal and the floor of the bed. So somebody put this rectangular tubing on top of the frame, put the U-bolts on it to clamp it down, and then built the bed on top of it. So there's no way I can take them out unless I cut a slot in the deck of the floor, and I don't really want to do that because I might use the deck for something else. So let me get the plasma cutter set up and I'll start chopping away at this. Alright, I took the plasma cutter and I got everything cut that needed to be, and there's one thing that I wanted to go over with, and that is cutting U-bolts. 9 times out of 10, if you go to cut one of these, it's probably going to be under a lot of stress. The stress put on this one was from sitting the bed onto the frame of this truck with this thin strip of wood in between. Now over time, moisture has got into this wood, causing it to swell, and that put an insane amount of stress on that U-bolt. Case in point, I got up there to the top of it with my plasma cutter and cut it, and when I cut it and got the heat sunk into it, it broke the other side completely off when the stress let out of that. Through the top of this U-bolt over on the other side of the truck, So there's one thing to keep in mind, and that is do not get your hand in between a confined space and something under stress, because if this thing lets go, you could probably end up with some broken fingers or maybe even a broken hand. Okay, so I got in here with the plasma cutter and I cut both of the braces out on the inside of the frame, and I got the braces cut on the outside of the frame that ties the truck frame to this hitch on the truck. Now I got all the U-bolts cut as well, so there's only one thing left to do, and that's to get the bed off of this truck, and I think I got an idea. If you've watched enough of my videos by now, you probably realize this ain't that kind of channel. The next video on this truck, I'll probably be taking the crane and lifting the bed off of this. I may have to end up using the high lift because let's just say the crane truck is not the most reliable piece of equipment that I own. Thanks a lot for taking the time out of your day to watch my videos. It truly means a lot. I really appreciate all the kind comments that I've been getting. And if you like what you see in these videos, please consider subscribing. And if you do, go ahead and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any updates on these awesome projects. And as always, just a friendly reminder that it doesn't matter if you're working on your project in a garage or in your driveway. What matters is that you go out there, you do the job yourself, and you learn more about your project, whatever that project may be. Now that this video's over and the weather's permitting, how about you go outside and work on something? My name is Zane, and I'll catch you next time.